Hi, it's Josh coming at you with some real live human intelligence and the hope that anybody who uses and supports AI gets what's coming to them. But in terms of the games that I played in the month of July, I'm going to talk about 3 video games and 3 board games. One of these board games is one that I don't think I've talked about before. I've only been gaming with my kids in the month of July. I haven't been seeking out any other type of gaming. One reason is I tend to get my share of social situations in the summertime with summer activities. Another reason is I got a big project on my plate because I am going to be running 2 simultaneous game auctions. I had a bunch of my own games I wanted to auction off, and then a friend approached me and asked if I could help them to sell off a bunch of their games as well, which I had done in the past, and basically we split the profits on that, and so I agreed to that. My friend told me they were looking to sell about 40 games, which added to my games I knew was going to take me quite a long time to get my auction together. As you might know if you've seen my other BGG auctions, I put many hours of work into preparing the auctions, running them, and then packaging and shipping games afterwards. So it's a very time-intensive commitment. But when I got their games and took them home and started going through them, I realized there weren't 40 games there were 90 games. So on the one hand, I was like, that's great. I'm going to end up with more money from all of this. On the other hand, I was like, this is going to turn into such a massive summer-long project to get all this together. And it's got me thinking that I really don't want to run any more game auctions after this. I would love to just sell off a bunch of my game collection and not have to do this anymore. The problem is, when your income is as tight as mine is, you don't often have a choice about doing really crappy things for money, because the truth is, by the time I get through all the work of the auction from start to finish, I'll be lucky to get $1 per hour of work that I put into it by the end of the day. So it's a ton of work for very little money, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of choice in the matter because of how little money I have already. So that's a bit of a bummer. But anyways, all of that to say, I will have an auction up and running for those of you who live in Canada. Those games will be available, and I'll certainly post about it when I finally get my auctions going. Hopefully I'll be able to sell off a bunch of my games and make a bit of money to put towards my younger son's birthday in the fall, and then Christmas for my boys after that. So anyways, let's get into the games. We'll start with the video games as usual. I'm going to go in order of the lowest rated to the highest rated games, but the lowest rated game is an 8.5 out of 10, so these are all fantastic games. I'm going to start by mentioning that I actually got back to Assassin's Creed Odyssey this month, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But after getting back to that game and realizing how much better a game it is than Enshrouded, I ended up flip-flopping my ratings of Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Enshrouded. So previously, I had rated Enshrouded a 9 out of 10. I now have 360 hours played in the game, which is crazy to me, but I changed my rating from 9 out of 10 to 8.5 out of 10, and I could see that dropping even a bit further because the more I've played it, the more I realized, even though it does so many different things, has so many different mechanisms, it does none of them very well or with any real depth, other than the one thing that keeps me coming back to the game, which is the fact that it has this gigantic world with very differing biomes that is just so fun to run around and explore. So, you know, it's just that escapism from the real world where I can just dive into this world and run around and look into nooks and crannies and explore things. That's really the main thing that keeps me coming back to it. But leaving that aside now and talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's funny, I realized after getting back to it that apparently this is enjoying a resurgence of popularity, in part because of the popularity of the reboot of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and also in a large part due to the release of the Odyssey film, I guess. I haven't seen the movie, but apparently that's got people looking at Assassin's Creed Odyssey again. The reason I wanted to get back and wrap it up was because my younger son Wyatt was interested in maybe getting into another game with me, so I wanted to get that one finished up. And there was only this one little epilogue part that I had not completed yet. Basically, my player had reached retirement. I thought the game was over, but then my old crew came back to me and said, wait, there's this one more island and one more quest we can do. And at that point, I had gotten a little burned out on the game and hadn't finish that final part, but I did get back to it in the month of July. I finally finished that part and literally saw the credits roll, so I got to the very end of the game. And like I said, that's what made me realize just how much better this game is than Enshrouded. It's just the visuals. It's such a beautiful, bright world to run around in. It's so alive with locations and people, unlike the dead, blighted world of Enshrouded. It has an actual story to it, which I know Enshrouded has a bit of a story too, but it's not that interesting. And ultimately, I decided on a final rating of Assassin's Creed Odyssey of 9 out of 10. And it's funny, I've gone on a bit of a roller coaster ride of my rating of Odyssey over my course of 246 hours of playtime. I had started off with a 9.5 out of 10, then dropped it to 8.5, then down to 7.5, then back up to 8.5, and now back up to 9 again. It's funny, as I got increasingly burned out on the game and doing the same stuff over and over and over again, then realizing, okay, it's actually a pretty decent game at the end. It also got me thinking that I really should just leave Enshrouded behind and pick up another Assassin's Creed game like Origins or that revamped Black Flag version, just because it's probably going to be a more interesting and enjoyable experience than continuing with Enshrouded. Although, like I said, it's just a comfort game to me at this point, where I just go back to the world and run around. And maybe I should just wait until the 1.0 version of Enshrouded is released, then come back to it and see where it's at. But anyways, we'll see what happens. The game that I continue to be super obsessed with is this little game, Transport Legion, that is like a turn-based, almost board game-like tower defense game where you're using cards and resources and map terrain to build up this army of heroes to defeat the waves of enemies that are coming through. I talked about it last month, but it's such a great little game. I finished all the different families. There's 9 different families that each add their own little twist to the game. I completed all of those on easy level, and I'm currently going through and playing them on normal level, looking to beat everything on normal level. I've increased the rating of this game too from a 9 to a 9.5, and by the time it's all said and done, this could be a 10 out of 10 game. It's just so well done, especially for a board game fan. This is such an ideal game to sit down and play. It's just so easy to sit down when I've got 20 minutes, knock off a level of the game, come back to it later in the day, another 20 minutes, come back to it in the evening for another 20 minutes, and it's just an easy game to jump in and out of. But moving on to the board gaming for the month, this first game, like I said, is going to be one that I don't believe I've talked about before. And it's funny, I went on my annual uncles and cousins camping trip, which we do every summer with myself, my 3 younger brothers, and whichever of our children can make it. As the children become older and become teens and young adults, each year fewer and fewer of them end up coming to camping, mostly because now they're working, they have jobs and stuff like that. But both my kids were able to go, and a couple of their cousins, and all 3 of my brothers. And the great thing was we actually stayed in little cabins this year instead of tent camping, which, as somebody who is not a fan of camping, that was pretty ideal. So that worked out pretty nicely. And because we were in cabins, and because the weather forecast actually looked pretty bad, it looked like it was going to be storming for much of the time we were away, I packed 17 of my board games with me, with a focus on games that play well with more players, because there were going to be 8 of us in total. But the only 2 that I ended up getting played, I only played with my kids. We ended up having better than expected weather, and we didn't have ideal play space in the cabin for that type of tabletop gaming. But the game I'm going to talk about first is called Armadöra, which I played 2 players with my younger son Wyatt one evening. It's a highly tactical little game where players have their army of warriors of different values that they place face down on the map as an area influence type of thing, but they also have fences that they're playing to try to fence in areas where there's gold, so that the strength of your warriors in that area ends up outnumbering the strength of your opponent's warriors in that area, so that you win the gold, and most gold at the end of the game wins. So there's no luck to the game. It's all tactics. Each little army, there's 4 different armies, and they each have this slightly asymmetrical ability that kind of adds to the interest as well. It's a really well done little game. It doesn't play the best with 2 players, but it does work well. I think anywhere from 2 to 4 players. 3 might be ideal. 4 would probably be great too. But I rated a solid 7 out of 10. It could even be maybe a 7.5. After I played it with Wyatt, though, he only gave it a 5.5 out of 10. It's not really his style. These really almost abstract, despite the kind of fun fantasy theme on it. It's fairly abstract, highly tactical, no luck type of game. Isn't really Wyatt's type of thing. What is a huge hit with my boys is The Hobbit There and Back Again. We got 2 more plays. Scenario 4 was different than the previous 3 scenarios in that it was just really focused on playing these polyomino shapes instead of tracing pathways through the map, and so that was a really fun change of pace. And Evan won for the 4th time out of 4, so he had the first 4 scenarios. Evan was the winner. And then when we were camping, the 3 of us played scenario 5 as well. This was the weakest of the scenarios so far. It was a little bit of a confusing mess. It ended up being the first one where Evan didn't win, but both boys loved the game. I give it a solid 7 out of 10. Wyatt gives it an 8 out of 10, and my older son Evan gives it a 10 out of 10. And then finally, my best game of the month for board games, we have Warhammer Underworlds Nightvault again, which I continued to play with my younger son Wyatt. What was cool about our play this month is that we matched up the 2 factions that come in the base game. So previously we had been playing mostly factions that I had bought separate from the base game, and all, like I had mentioned previously, pretty much all of the games we played were blowouts for one side or the other. However, when we matched up the 2 base game factions together, we ended up with a tied game, and I didn't even really bother to look up if there's a tiebreaker, if both players have the same number of victory points, because I thought it was just cool that we had a tied game. But finally, we found a faction that Stormsire's Curse Breakers didn't just completely run over. Thorns of the Briar Queen definitely held their own. It's an interesting matchup where Stormsire's Curse Breakers have 3 really strong units, and Thorns of the Briar Queen have a whole host of kind of weak ghosts, and so it makes for an interesting matchup, and it worked out really well. We had fun with it. I rate the game 8 out of 10. Wyatt rates it 9.8 out of 10, continues to have a lot of fun with it, and I think it's probably a little impatient with the slow rate at which I paint my factions, because I'm waiting to get my goblins to the table and he's excited to take them on. But yeah, so we continue to have fun with that. That's pretty much it for my gaming for July. As always, I really love to hear what you've been playing, and I'd especially love to hear if there's any games that you're looking forward to with the convention season in effect. With, I think Gen Con is on as I record this, although yeah, I think it's this weekend that Gen Con's happening. So if there are any titles you are eagerly anticipating, I'd love to hear about that too. Regardless, I really appreciate my Patreon supporters who help me to have a budget for gaming. Like I said, money's tight, and people like Mojo Dam, Saver Girl, Adam W, Joanna N, Osmandas Perfect, and Abo are the ones that allow me to even buy games every so often so I can enjoy trying new stuff. And even if you don't support me financially on Patreon, the fact that you're here, you are supporting me, and it means a lot to me, and I appreciate you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers. I'm going to go in order of the highest rated to the lowest rated games. No, to the Warriors of really. We'll catch you on